Well, thanks for joining. We're going to get started here in a couple minutes. All right. I think that's most of people from the waiting room, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abby Edwards. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Adaptation Planning Grant Program Manager on the Integrated Climate Adaptation and Resiliency Program team. I'm joined by my teammates, Brandon and Sarah. Sarah's on tech support, so let her know if you have any questions. So I want to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the state of California exists on the occupied territory of over 110 federally recognized tribes and over 70 non-federally recognized tribes. This land has been stewarded by Indigenous people since time immemorial. We acknowledge the critical importance of these lands and waters to the Indigenous people of California today. We at the Office of Planning and Research join you all from Sacramento, California, on ancestral Nisenan tribal land, territory of the Southern Maidu, the Valley Miwok, and Blackfeet people. If you're up for it, could you share your name, your organization, and maybe where you're calling in from in the chat? That would be great. We recognize the commitment that it takes to attend these sessions and appreciate you all taking the time to be with us today, especially given the severe weather throughout the state and the late afternoon call. So thank you all again for being here. And given all that, we're also recording this session and it will be available upon request. So today we're going to talk through the elements of the Adaptation Planning Grant Program. We'll go over the high-level view, we'll walk through the timeline, the application components, and then go over next steps. I anticipate the presentation portion of today only taking up about 30 minutes or so. And so we'll save the end of the session for Q&A. And for the Q&A, if you do have technical questions specific to your project, please send us a follow-up email or attend office hours, and we'll share more about that later. We hope that the Q&A today can remain broadly applicable to most attendees. And if you do have questions that come up as we are going through, you can definitely add them in the chat. We'll make it through the presentation portion and then we'll address the questions in the chat. So here is a quick look at our program timeline. So as some of you may remember, we kicked off engagement last March. We developed the draft program guidelines. We had a public comment period and launched the intent survey in November. And we released the application materials last week. And the application window is now open and it'll close March 31st at 5 p.m. And we expect awards around early summer. So a little bit of an overview of our 2022 engagement. Over the course of a 9-month period from March to November, we undertook a statewide engagement process, engaging over 400 people representing organizations and state partners through public workshops, surveys, and interviews to inform and support the development of this program. We released the engagement summary in July, and that's in the chat. And as a part of this outreach, we had a 30-day public comment period on our draft guidelines in October, and we hosted 4 public workshops. So during the public comment period, we received 273 unique comments. And since then, we've made over 1,595 edits to the round 1 draft guidelines. We transcribed all the public comments from workshops, and we also worked with state agencies and partners to identify solutions and opportunities for clarification. Some general public comments were supportive of overall program goals or specific elements of the program guidelines, and in those instances, no changes were made to the program. Through the process, we were really guided by the public comments received and influenced by the key takeaways that came out of our original Adaptation Planning Grant Program engagement summary. Furthermore, we made additional changes that were not directly suggested by members of the public, but rather guided by the APGP priorities and goals. And we'll share more about how those have evolved over time. As we made changes, we were guided by the following questions. Will this change improve clarity for applicants and/or reviewers? Is this change identified as a priority by multiple interested parties? Will this change reduce the complexity of applying while maintaining the integrity of the program? Will this change enhance the program's ability to support equitable outcomes? And is this change permitted by statute? We shared the overall public engagement or public comment summary in the chat, and that really walks you through step by step the changes that were made. And as mentioned at the beginning of this call, we are really grateful to everyone who took the time to review the guidelines, provide comments. The program is really stronger because of everyone's input, and we hope it's really responsive to the comments we've been made. So what we are going to share with you today is all reflective of that 2022 engagement I just shared about. So I'll start with the high level components, and then Brandon will talk you through some of the details. And then again, we'll round out with some of those next steps. So in the guidelines, one of the first things that we do is define adaptation. Since it's the centerpiece of the program, we feel it's important to share what our understanding of adaptation is and how it's connected to and differs from resilience and mitigation. And this might be repetitive for all of you, so apologies. But according to the state's Planning and Investing for Resilient California Guidebook, adaptation is an adjustment in natural or human systems to new or changing environments. Whereas resilience describes the capacity of any entity to prepare for disruptions, recover from shocks and stresses, and adapt and grow from a disruption. California and communities are experiencing more frequent, prolonged, and severe impacts of climate change, including flooding, wildfires, drought, extreme heat, and extreme weather events that we're experiencing, and sea level rise. Preparing for these changes is climate adaptation. It's also important to note that addressing climate change relies on both mitigation and adaptation. Communities should take advantage of strategies that support both goals. For a couple examples, homes that install solar panels and battery storage systems are better protected against climate-related disruptions to the electricity supply. That is an adaptation effort. But solar panels also generate electricity without any GHGs and allow homes to use less energy from GHG-emitting power plants, and that is a mitigation effort. However, there's potential for conflict, with a notable example centered on extreme heat, and I'm sure some have heard this example before and experienced it. But consider a program to install air conditioning systems in homes. Well, this helps protect residents against extreme heat, which is an adaptation effort. These systems also require more energy to run and could increase GHG emissions if the energy source is not a carbon-free, and that's working against mitigation efforts. So we just wanted to note that it's essential to reduce emissions and plan for impact simultaneously, because efforts to adapt will be overwhelmed by the harm done by climate change if emissions are not reduced. That's our high level overview. So what is the program all about? The Adaptation Planning Grant Program leverages $25 million to fund local, regional, and tribal communities in integrated climate adaptation planning. By facilitating climate adaptation planning, APGP supports the development of climate resilient projects across the state. We have $6.6 million available for round one funding, and the awards will range between $150,000 to $650,000. So through our 2022 engagement, we identified and refined the priorities for the program. So the first is to explicitly and meaningfully prioritize equitable outcomes, particularly in the most vulnerable communities, by establishing an inclusive funding program that removes barriers for applicants and ensures that awardees represent a wide geographic, economic, and population diversity. Also, to encourage communities to equitably plan for and respond to multiple climate risks by centering the needs of vulnerable communities and supporting an all-risk approach to adaptation planning. These grants encourage communities to conduct integrated planning activities. Thirdly, to support integrated social and physical infrastructure planning to achieve community resilience. This program provides flexible funding to meet multi-sector and issue planning needs that intersect with climate risk, including but not limited to land use, transportation, economic, housing, natural resource management, public infrastructure, and hazard mitigation issues. Fourth is to build statewide capacity to plan for and implement equitable planning strategies by supporting peer-to-peer learning, communities of practice, information sharing, and publishing case studies on the state adaptation clearinghouse. And then lastly, to embed equity into the planning process from project visioning through project evaluation by increasing opportunities for shared decision-making, utilizing inclusive processes, and actively remediating historic underinvestment by fairly distributing access to the benefits and privileges associated with community investment. So those are some of the priorities of the program that have evolved and shifted over the past year through our engagement process. So who's eligible? Local public entities are eligible: California Native American tribes, community-based organizations, including but not limited to 501c3 nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, philanthropic organizations, foundations, and other organizations with a history of representing vulnerable communities. We've shared the guidelines in the chat, and so hopefully you can follow along. There's a lot more information there around who's eligible to apply. And as we know in the guidelines, there should be a minimum of one co-applicant in addition to the lead applicant. So more than one co-applicant is also encouraged, that either the lead applicant or one of the co-applicants should be a public entity or a tribe. Community-based organizations should partner with a local public entity or tribe as listed in the guidelines to ensure that the planning efforts funded can ultimately be implemented by local, regional, or tribal entities. Public entities should also partner with community-based organizations to ensure that the planning efforts are centering the needs of the vulnerable communities. And in the guidelines, we have more information there, but that's the high level. We also, in the guidelines, note that in each of these cases, we understand that a one-size-fits-all approach does not work. And we will accept a justification as to why partnership with a public entity or a community-based organization is not feasible. So how do you apply? Sarah's going to add more links in the chat for these materials. And for those of you who might be watching this recording back, all of these resources we are referencing can be found on our website. And you just need to type in ICARP APGP grants in your browser, and it should get you to our webpage. And all of these resources are listed under the resource section of our website. So in order to apply, applicants need to complete the request for full application, which is the APGP Intent Survey. We launched that in November 7th, and we are accepting those on a rolling basis. But it's important to note that you need to submit that in order to get your, to be able to have the link to submit your full application. And Brandon will share more about that in a bit. And then on the 6th, on Friday, we released the NOFA, the Notice of Funding Availability, and all the application materials. So you can just peek at those to the chat, and Brandon will go over those in more detail. And again, as we mentioned, all those materials are due before 5 p.m. on March 31st. So those are the broad strokes of the program. Brandon now is going to get into the details of each element of the program and what is required for submission. And if you have questions throughout, please add them to the chat or message me directly. And again, we'll address the questions at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'll hand it over to Brandon.
Thanks, Abby. And again, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. For everyone's awareness, the application materials, as Abby had mentioned, can be found on our website. And this is what it looks like up here on screen. And Sarah will go ahead and send a quick share a quick link in the chat, so y'all will be able to check that out. You just scroll down to the resource section and you'll be able to see the application materials and a lot of the other links that Sarah has shared so far. Next slide, please. So the application process requires applicants to complete 4 major components, including the request for full application intent survey, which is a necessary first step in the application process. Then we have the general narrative questions document, an application workbook, which includes a budget and work plan templates and examples, and up to 3 letters of support. We'll go ahead and share a link to the intent survey, but this is what it looks like off to the right. All project teams must complete this intent survey, which will give you access to an individualized SharePoint folder where all application materials must be uploaded by 5 p.m. on March 31st. We'll mention that date and time a few times throughout this presentation, so make sure to mark your calendars if you're intending to apply. The images to the right will show, you see the blue image that gives you further instructions, and then some of the questions will sort of look like down there on the right. They're really high level questions, nothing too in depth. Beyond being a required part of the application process, this intent survey also allows the Adaptation Planning Grant staff, so myself, Abby, and Sarah, to get to know your project a little bit better and ask clarifying questions if necessary. Please note that applicants who do not submit a survey will not receive a SharePoint link, which is required to submit your application materials. Next slide, please. Once applicants have submitted their intent surveys, each applicant will receive a link from Adaptation Planning Grant staff, most likely myself, to their individual SharePoint folder. The email invitation will look something like the image displayed here on the slide. The subject title of the email will say, Brandon Harrell or Abby Edwards shared a folder with you. And the content of that email will include a link to your individual folder. If you do not see this email within 24 hours of submitting your intent survey, please email myself, Brandon, or Abby, and I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat just in case. The email invitation may also end up in your junk email, as some Microsoft emails tend to do. So please double check your junk email or your junk inbox before emailing me, if possible. Next slide, please. So once you've accepted the invitation email, Microsoft will usually send you an email with a 5-digit code to authenticate your email address. The only instance where Microsoft won't ask users to authenticate their email address is typically if you're already using Microsoft Outlook products and Microsoft Suite products. But typically, everyone else is going to have to do this authentication process. You may also find that 5-digit code in your junk folder. So just check that as well. I've already received about 4 emails from folks where this has happened. And it's just sort of like a necessary evil of using these types of authentications. So after completing this step, you'll have access to your SharePoint folder, and you should be all good. The SharePoint folder will be named after your project title and will include all of the required application templates, including a thorough application instructions document, which is not displayed on this slide, but it will be in your document, I promise. To answer your question, Colin, yes, you can add multiple personnel to the folder, and that's something that we've found to be pretty normal, especially with the partnership model of our grant. If you'd like to change your project name or edit users, I can assist you in adding them or in changing the name of your folder. Just go ahead and email me, ping me, and we can make those changes. Next slide, please. So here's a glance at the general narrative questions doc, which is a Word document template that you'll find in your application materials folder. I'm going to give a high level overview of this document for now, but applicants can find more detailed instructions on the first page of this document. It's kind of a recurring theme. We don't really share or require folks to fill out documents without there being some kind of instruction in the beginning to kind of tell you where to go and to help you wayfind through the document. Those instructions will usually include information on correct formatting and naming conventions, to name a few. Each team is responsible for completing one general narrative questions doc for the overall project proposal, and we strongly encourage each project team to answer the questions completely. There are 5 sections with a total of 6 questions. Each section includes a word count that should be adhered to as strict as possible. For those who may be curious, yes, images such as graphics and maps are allowed. The blue headers at the top of each section, as you can see from the image, these are going to coincide with the scoring criteria that you'll find in the grant guidelines. When answering each question, please be sure to review the appropriate scoring criteria in the guidelines to gain more information and improve your score. In some instances, the scoring criteria of the guidelines will contain links to additional resources, which will help you better answer the question or questions. Again, additional formatting instructions can be found at the top of the doc. So please consult those instructions or email me. The application workbook contains several tabs. Of them, the 3 main tabs that must be completed by applicants are the first 3 tabs: the application summary, the work plan, and the budget. The workbook also includes additional tabs with examples and references to help guide applicants through the process. Please do not copy the examples, as they are purely demonstrative and should not be mistaken for actual work plans or budgets. That being said, applicant work plans should have clear timelines, discrete tasks, and detailed deliverables. Budget line items should clearly align with the tasks described in those work plans. Please double check that all project numbers, names, and applicant information are correct across all of the workbook tabs. Again, if applicants experience any difficulty with the workbook formatting, formulas, or functionality, please contact me. Please also be sure to check the % threshold for the direct and indirect costs. You'll find this is what the budget template looks like. The workbook comes preloaded with a few formulas that will auto-calculate these percentages as you enter your budget information. So please, to the best of your ability, do not tamper with these cells once you've downloaded the workbook and start entering in your information. Letters of support should come from and represent the local and/or regional communities. Examples of supporters could be local CBOs or community-based organizations, elected officials, or appointed leaders. Strong letters of support will give reviewers a better picture of the community partnership and convey overall support for the project collaboration. Strong letters of support may also help justify or approve the proposed budget and add more detail regarding additional funding that may be required to complete the full scope of the project. Please upload those letters of support to the appropriate folder, which we've also named Letters of Support, provided in your SharePoint folder. And that folder can be seen here in the image to the right with an example in the example folder. To summarize the full application process, we have step 1, which is to complete the request for full application intent survey. As mentioned, Adaptation Planning Grant staff, most likely myself, will provide a direct link to an individual folder where you will be able to upload application materials, and you'll see most likely my name or Abby's name in that invitation. Full applications, which include the general narrative questions document, workbook, and letters of support, are due by 5 p.m. on March 31st, Friday, to the SharePoint folder. Applicants will not be able to access their folder after the submission deadline. 1 minute late is unfortunately still late. With that, I will hand it back to Abby to walk you through the review and awards section.
Thanks, Brandon, and thank you all. Lots of really good questions coming through the chat, so I'm excited to get into those questions. We just have a few more slides. So for the review and awards portion, applications will be reviewed and evaluated by APGP staff and also an interagency review panel. And then following the initial application review, members of the review panel will conduct interviews with the top scoring applicants. APGP staff anticipate making awards around early summer, so early June is what our goal is right now. So wanted to go over lastly some support that you can expect from all of us. So we are intending, so we're reviewing intent surveys right now. We will send out those individualized SharePoint links once we review them. We might have a couple of follow-up questions based on the responses from the intent survey, so you can keep an eye out for that. We're going to have office hours, and those are going to be every Wednesday until the application is due from 1 to 2. And basically the way that we're going to have those office hours is it's going to be first come, first served, and you'll be held in the waiting room until the person that's in there is done. And we expect to spend about 10 minutes with everyone as they come through. We will adjust this as needed. And if you end up staying in the waiting room and aren't able to connect with us, please just send us an email and we can set up some time to talk with you. We're also going to do a February and March workshop. So we agreed to do 3 workshops throughout the course of the application period. And so we're intending to do 1 per month on top of these office hours and one-on-one conversations. And we're also drafting an FAQ document. We are going to have it live on the website as a standalone page that will continue to update as questions come through, like a lot of the ones that are coming through the chat. And then also ones that we have just based on the past year of engagement. Then lastly, Sarah, I think shared in the chat our Notion. It's like a social media toolkit where we would love if you could promote this opportunity. If you have a newsletter or have any different opportunities, we'd love to come speak and share about the opportunity. We'd also love for you to just share within your own network. So we shared that toolkit for you all. And with that, we are done with this portion of this call. So if my team could stop recording, that would be great. And then I will kind of walk through and address the